Welcome back to Bake, Brew and Blues. Today we're going to be doing some brewing, but we're not going to be brewing beer, we're going to be brewing a batch of kombucha. So before you start this, you're going to need to find yourself a SCOBY, which is what's floating on the top of this brew here. You can get that from a friend who's got one, or you can easily order them online. So what I'm going to do is start getting ready to replace this batch. I make enough for 2 of these bottles, and I do one batch, and about 4 or 5 days later, or 5 or 6 days usually, I'll bottle it up and we want to replace it with a new batch of tea. So all we need to do, I'll just boil the kettle. I have a jug which can take 1.5 litres of water, and I'll put in 2 black tea bags and 2 green tea bags. And we're just going to fill that up, and then I'm going to let that just brew for 10 minutes. And at the end of the 10 minutes, we're going to take the tea bags out. Don't squeeze the tea bags into the tea at that point, otherwise you'll just end up with a bit more bitterness than you probably like. And then after the 10 minutes, I'm going to stir through and dissolve 3/8 of a cup of raw sugar. Once that's done, we then cover it and leave it to cool down, and then when it's cool, we're going to be ready to replace the brew. Okay, so we're back, and the tea that we brewed before has cooled down a bit. So just to recap, 1.5 litres of water was in here with 2 bags of black tea, 2 bags of green tea, and 3/8 of a cup of sugar. We left the tea bags in there for 10 minutes, and at the end of it we stirred through the sugar and then just let it cool down. So we're ready now to change over the brew. I have these 2 bottles here. I wash them and sterilise them, so I use a sterilisation solution the same that you'd use from a home brew shop. So they've been just a little bit of sterilisation powder in them and rinsed thoroughly, and they should be nice and clean. So what I've got is my kombucha, and this has been in here for about 5 or 6 days. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a plain kombucha, and I'm also going to make a blueberry flavoured kombucha. So I use frozen berries, which we just basically need to just put in a layer in the bottom. Don't need too much, just so it's a little bit more flavour and a bit of colour. And when you finish the kombucha that you're using the blueberries from, don't throw them away. You don't have to throw them away. I put them in a container here, and you can add them to natural yogurt, a bit of oats, and that makes a nice meal. Okay, so what I've got is a funnel with a strainer on top, and we're just going to pour the kombucha out nice and gently. We're not trying to disturb it too much. And then swap it over and fill up this one. The strainer's catching a bit of the SCOBY that's falling out. That's okay. Now I want to make sure I leave about a cup or so left in my fermenter jar. That's what we do. Outside for a moment. And wash. So all you need to do with those now, they're done, ready to drink. So I usually leave them for another day or so, particularly the fruit ones, to ferment a little bit more, and then they can go in the fridge and they'll be drunk over the next week or so. Now, every 3 or 4 weeks we take out the SCOBY and just leave it with the bit that we want to retain, because every time we do a batch, the SCOBY is growing quite large. So we started off this one with a disc about that big, and just make sure you wash your hands really well. And we're going to get the SCOBY out. So I'm just going to reach in, and you can see how big it is. So it's growing quite a lot. And what I want, a bit on the bottom here, this smaller piece, that's actually the freshest piece. That's the bit that was done last. So all I want to do is just peel that bit off. I'm going to put that back in my brew. And what a good idea is too, is to probably peel another piece off. Don't worry about being too gentle with it, it's fine. And you can put that in a container, just something like that, with a little bit of the juice from the brew there, and put that in the fridge, and just in case something goes wrong, you've got a backup. Okay, so I won't do that, and then I usually put the rest of that SCOBY in the compost to go in the garden. So we have a little bit of juice left over with the fresh SCOBY, and all I need to do is pour our freshly made brew. In with the SCOBY, and then I just have some paper towel that I put over the top, and then I just put the lid on. You don't have to tighten the lid too much, just pop it on there, give it a little bit of a stir, just stir it at once now, and then don't stir it again, and then that can just sit on the bench 5 or 6 days, and we'll be doing this again. As I said, I change that SCOBY over probably once a month or so, every 3 or 4 batches, and that'll just keep going. Fresh kombucha. And this is basically what it ends up being. So this is a batch from last week. This is the berry kombucha that we made, so it's the same one we've got there. And if you haven't had kombucha before, it's going to have a light fizz to it from the fermentation process of the SCOBY. It's also going to have a little bit of sour vinegar flavour to it as well. But that's quite nice. It is a little bit of an acquired taste for some people, but I actually quite like it. So I have a little bit of a glass of that every morning, and it's lovely. That's the kombucha. For our blues song tonight, we're going to go back to the old days and listen to a little bit of Sonny, Terry and Brownie McGhee. We'll see you next time.
Went up on the mountain,
look
down in the sea,
thinking about the woman,
the one we couldn't agree.